Nuremberg trial, the gentlemen, and use the term very loosely, that were supposed to be representing the people who took orders from Adolf Hitler, they tried to use the excuse that they weren't responsible because they were just doing what they were told. Well, that excuse didn't work then, and it is not going to work now. You and I and everyone else in this country who pays taxes and helps to fund wars and allows abortions to take place and helps to fund them, our hands are dirty. We are complicit in this crime against humanity. America as a nation is guilty of war crimes. George Bush, Barack Obama have all been evaluated just like Slobodan Milosevic, and Bush and Cheney and Obama have all been found guilty in the international tribunals, the international courts of law. So frankly, the world recognizes our leaders for who they are, but these leaders have been allowed to function because we, the people, have been negligent. We've not held them accountable, and so we have to bear the brunt of responsibility, unfortunately.
Well, you know, I accomplished something this year. I accomplished something. I've got my veteran's ID card. You know, I fell victim to this propaganda. I fell victim to the propaganda. Back in 1964, I volunteered for the Army. I volunteered for Special Forces. And I didn't go to Vietnam. They actually tried to kill me before I got there. Don't know, maybe it was just the vaccinations. Maybe it was something more. I don't know, but it took me 50 years to get recognized by the VA. Oh, well, we lost those records. Well, we don't have any record of this. We don't have any. Well, there was that fire in Kansas City. There was that fire in St. Louis. I persevered, and I got that. But back in '64, I helped stop that Vietnam War when I found out that it wasn't, that it was all based on lies. There was no Gulf of Tonkin incident. I started selling peace symbols all across America. I sold peace symbols to Kmart, Spencer's Gifts, and every head shop in the country. So I feel like I helped stop that war, and I think we're coming up on that now. And I've told people, anytime a totalitarian regime, a communist regime, a fascist regime, whatever name you want to call it, when it takes control, they go after three classes of people in order. They go after the farmers first because they don't want you being able to feed yourself or your neighbors. They go after the intelligentsia next. That's anyone that's smart enough and educated enough to know what they're doing. And third, they go after the veterans and police officers that are still loyal to the old regime. They murdered them in Soviet Union. They murdered them in Germany. They murdered them in China. And they've been doing a pretty good job of killing off Americans here with their pharmaceutical industries, medical industries. And we have the most Americans in prison, most of our own people in prison than any other country, including communist countries like China. Is it possible that the Chinese and the Russians actually woke up after 100 years under communism?
And they'll play the one thing you mentioned about the people in prison. Well, you know, I say that 25% of the people in the world that are in prison in our jails. But you know, the sad thing is that the majority of the people in America are in a prison that they've consented to be in. When you think inside the box, you are inside of the man-made prison. And frankly, most of us are slaves and we don't even know it.
That's
Goethe,
right.
the German philosopher Goethe said, "The most helpless of all slaves is the man who falsely believes that he is free." And frankly, the powers to be, they understand that the best way to control people is to keep them asleep. It's much easier to control a man that's sleeping than a man that is actually thinking critically. So that's why our schools basically train and teach children to be obedient, not to think, not to question authority, but just simply to do what you're told.
Indoctrination rather than education. And
that's correct.
Again, I'm well aware of that, and that's why I helped start the Little Red Schoolhouse, and which grew into Timothy Bible College. You know, if we use that plan and that Timothy Bible College and the Little Red Schoolhouse, we wouldn't have any Columbines. We wouldn't have any Sandy Hooks. And and the children would get educated. The tools are right there. You're listening to this show on the internet. The tools are there and all of the information is there about what we're talking about. We're not, this is not conspiracy theory. This is giving you facts, folks. And, you know, you can do something. The people have a tendency to say, I'm just one man. What can I do? You can do a lot. If you talk to your neighbors, if you talk to your family, if you lose this negative programming that your government and their mainstream media tries to put into you. They tried to demonize me for starting the militias. They tried to demonize me for opposing the Vietnam War. And I did that, but nobody spit on veterans. Nobody spit on Vietnam vets. Not around me. I would hurt somebody for that. We really got a choice. We can be good and we can work for this country and for our people, or we can work for the other side.
No, that's right. Almost since the very beginning of time, there's been two groups of people. There's been the people who are righteous and ethical, and there's been people who are unethical and basically seek to harvest the fruits of other men's labor. And the financial elite at the top of this structure are determined to do everything in their power to enslave the rest of humanity.
That's really what it is. You've got it. You got it nailed here. It's enslavement. And I said I've told people so many times. You know, they've refined the art of slavery to the point the slave don't know they're slaves.
And they also basically hire people to be government workers to help control the sheep. You've got, you know, a lot of people sell out their brothers and sisters because they can get entitlements, benefits, and salaries from the government.
They are afraid to stand up. They're afraid they're going to lose something, and they might lose this handout. But they could cut this off at any time. They've even told you about it, talking about the EMP, the dangers of an EMP.
Yep.
I think that's part of their plan. Sooner or later, they want to take us back down to the state of savages. And frankly, I think the Indian Wars, what we did to the Indians, is pretty despicable in itself. I think we'd been a lot better off if we had followed more of the Indian culture, who had civilizations here in the Americas far advanced than anything that Europe saw. The cities of the Mayans and the Aztecs were marvels of architecture, equaled only by places like Egypt. We've still got a lot to learn about being self-sufficient. And that's the other thing. They don't want you to, we could generate our own energy. They do it in Germany. Most of the farmhouses have solar units. And there is some good news coming out from the Tesla motor car company. They've got batteries that they're building, and they've got a mega plant to build these batteries in the Southwest. And each home could be independent. There's really hope here, Keith. There is the technology we've got now, and we've actually had the technology to do all of this for over 100 years. It's been suppressed, hasn't it?
That's right. I understand that Tesla, during his days, had virtually come up with a capacity to be able to generate energy without the use of fossil fuels. And J.P. Morgan and the financial elite would have none of it. They basically silenced the whole project and everything because they couldn't sell this free source of energy. And so we have been deprived. And if you take a look at there's just so many cases where the financial elite have had a monopoly, and they will do everything they can to keep the monopoly of power that they possess.
Well, they've done that on a number of fronts. The pharmaceuticals, the medical industry, the power companies, the gasoline companies. This is all that. You know, I've said one of the reasons the UFOs are so top secret is they don't want Americans or the people of the world to know that we could have lunch on the moon and be back in time for dinner without using a drop of gasoline.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend on the chat room, David Kosh, said hemp for production, hydrogen from water for fuel, and free electricity for all is just the start. I mean, we really could do that. We've had guys that built cars that ran on water over 50 years ago.
Well, your idea of the village really makes a lot of sense. I mean, there's no reason for anyone in the world to go hungry. You know, if the resources were used for individuals to be able to produce their own sustenance, we wouldn't have to worry about world hunger. Hunger is a tool to control people, and frankly, we need to develop more of a community, and people need to share and to care for one another. And Thomas Jefferson was of the opinion that the United States would be far better off to be primarily an agrarian economy where virtually everyone was an owner of their own land, a sovereign owner of land, and people were able to grow their crops and were able to trade their potatoes for the other man's apples and the man's beans for corn, and people were able to barter with one another and to have an economy based on that. Our whole fraudulent monetary system, again, benefits only one group of people, and that is the people who own and control the banks. Everyone else is a victim.
You try growing food instead of grass in your backyard. You've answered part of the problem. You could put solar panels and wind generators on your house and make your house pay you. We've really got all of this technology here, but it's discouraged, and Well, it's a lot of it's priced out of your reach. You want to buy solar panels? You got $10,000. Maybe you can save $50 a month. That ain't the way. We could actually build, and they have built. I've seen videos from Australia where they built magnetic generators. Look like about the size of a computer or a fan blade, and you could stack them on each other and generate all the power you need for your home. Liberty villages. I came up with that idea because I said, how did we live 100 years ago? How did we live 200 years ago? We grew our own food. We used the windmills to pump the water. We didn't need the government or the bankers for nothing.
Well, using the analogy back in the olden days of Texas and most all the rest of the country, when a man in the 19th century, when his barn burned down, he didn't go to the bank and borrow money. He just asked his neighbors to come over and pitch in, and they did. And so communities supported one another, and helped one another. And nowadays, everybody says, well, there's no need for us to help one another because the government will gladly come in and help everybody. Well, the help that the government gives us is slavery. That's what they give us. They provide us with an opportunity to give up our sovereignty in exchange for what we think is security, but it certainly is not.
No, it's not, and it's really what we've got to do if we're going to survive this anywhere outside of a FEMA camp. They're already trying to herd the homeless, and they're creating homelessness. They're trying to herd the homeless into FEMA centers. They will, and I think one state has made it illegal to be homeless.
Well, and now the people are being told that they can't give food to the hungry and the people who don't have any food, that it's illegal to give food to the homeless, and it's just absurd. In other words, if you follow the admonitions of Christ to love thy neighbor, loving thy neighbor is against the law. You can't love thy neighbor without a government permit. Only the government can love the people by providing them with benefits that they should and could be earning on their own.
Yes, and they are trying to stop that. There was a woman in Florida. I did a story on a woman in Florida who unplugged, and she got solar and she got wind, and she was catching her own rainwater and drinking her own water, and they condemned her house, and they tried to take her house away for being self-sufficient. This is tyranny, folks. This is tyranny. It's nothing else. And it's exactly what I've been warning you about and talking to you about for 20 years. I think it might be a good idea, this crowdfunding or whatever that is, that might be an idea. If you can do your own house, if you can become independent, if you can grow food, not grass in your backyard, you're really setting an example for the rest of the world, aren't you?
Well, I think so. I think that in order to receive, one of the laws of nature, nature's God is that you can't reap the harvest until you've sown the seeds. And this is what the crowdfunding is about. It's about sharing and caring and working together in harmony rather than competing with our brother. Again, Christ admonished us to love our neighbor. He didn't ask us to beat the hell out of our neighbor or to to kill our neighbor or to steal his property. He said, love thy neighbor. And frankly, with crowd sharing, it's very possible that you can achieve your financial objectives while helping rather than competing with your neighbor.
Working together. It's really the trick here.
I would like to anyone that's listened to this call, either live or on the archived basis, if you would like to discuss this further, you can call me, area code 951-282-3271. You can also send me an email at Keith, Keith Broders, Broders, Keith Broders at gmail.com. I'll be more than happy to assist you because I've always had in recent times anyway, I've kind of come to the conclusion that when I grow up, I want to be a humanitarian philanthropist. I want to basically spend my time and talent and whatever financial reserves I have to bless the lives of others. I think that we need to do the right thing for the right reason. Too many of us have been trained to believe that you need to do certain things in order to get rewards, or you need to do certain things to avoid certain punishments. And I would say that's wrong. The reality is you need to do what is right because it is right. And that's more or less my motto.
Well, that's a good motto. It's a good goal. It's a good goal. You know, I do the show to educate people and to introduce them to people like you that are trying to do something. You know, I don't take advertising. I don't sell advertising. You can't call and buy advertising on this show. You know, I will.
Are you trying to tell me that you're not for sale?
I am not for sale. And I won't take advertising because it wouldn't be fair to you. If I can't try your product, if I don't know you, then I'm not going to recommend you to anyone else. And, you know, that sets me apart from Alex Jones. And I got to tell you, Alex has been doing some good work. He does want you to be afraid rather than propose answer, and he does misdirect. He wants to point the finger at Hitler and the Nazis and doesn't want to talk about the Zionists or the banksters. So, but he still comes up with some pretty good information. And, you know, Goebbels told us that, you know, propaganda is 90% truth. Good propaganda is 90% truth. So
well, just kind of like a iceberg, you know. Only 10% is visible, and 90% is beneath the surface.
Well, we've got some stories. Now, tell me about the Constitution Club. How is that? How are people responding? Are they, you know, I've really been a fan of that because if you may not think you can change the world, but if you can change your neighborhood, and that could be a flyer. You could put a flyer on your neighbor's door saying, let's have a meeting. Let's have a meeting and talk about how we can become more self-sufficient to protect ourselves in case what the government tells us happens. The government's warning you about EMP. The sun could send a blast of EMP. Happened 100 years ago. If that happens, what do? Where do you turn? The government ain't going to help you if their computers are down. Talk to your neighbors. Here's a plan. Let's dig up our backyards and plant food there. Just seems like a common sense plan.
You know, the schools in the days of Thomas Jefferson, I mean, they taught the people how to shoe a horse, and they taught them how to fix the wheel on their wagon, and they taught the the young people how to build a corral and how to plant crops and how to harvest crops and how to do all kinds of things. But you see, the schools today don't teach the students how to do things that are really relevant. They teach the kids a bunch of facts and figures. They teach the kids how to be obedient lapdog servants. They teach the kids to trust the government. They teach the kids to be willing to conform rather than to think for themselves. They tell the students that it's evil to question authority and that you need to trust the government at all cases because the government is here to serve you. Well, it's all a big lie. And we need to teach kids to question authority. We have a conscience. Why did God give us a conscience if He didn't expect us to use our brain to think with? Creative thinking is a lost art. Very few people know how to think creatively. Most people basically are just depositories of worthless information designed to enslave the population.
That is their plan, and you know, they're actually pretty good about telling you in advance what they're going to do. I had a guest on.
Well, I think that you know that a cat will sometimes play with its food, you know, and I think that's what they're doing with us. They give us little hints and they tell us what they're going to do, and then they do it, and they basically are playing with our minds.
Programming. I said they don't call television programming for nothing.
Well, you know, it's like the old expression, garbage in, garbage out. You know, our kids go to school and they're like a blank floppy disk when they get to school, and by the time they leave, all of the kids look the same, act the same, talk the same, smell the same. I mean, they're trying to create clones that would be willing to do the things that they wouldn't do if they were thinking for themselves. But they don't want people to think for themselves. Our schools have become lapdog training centers where kids learn to obey, learn to do what they're told, not to question authority. And this is how we remain in the grasp of slavery, because we don't take personal responsibility. We don't hold our elected officials accountable. Well, Clay, I hate to bail on you here, but I've got a couple of things that I need to do this morning. I know that you have the capacity to be able to rattle on for days and days, but if there's anyone out there that had a question before I say goodbye, I'd be willing to entertain that.
Nobody here today, nobody in the chat room. They all know what's going on. So thank you very much, Keith Brothers and Constitution Club. Links are on freeamerican.com. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, sir. Take care and good day.
All right. All right. Hang on a minute or two. And let's do this.
Hello, friends. This is RJ, the Mighty Phoenix. Friends, if you're a business owner and need capital to sustain or accentuate your business, and if you've been in business for 2 years or more, and your credit scores are low as 500, I can help you. Credit scores don't pay back with money that you borrow. Credit scores are only weapons being used against you in the war on small business. You pay back money that you borrow with business monies earned. So if you have 6 recent bank statements and your business is active, and as I said, you've been in business for over 2 years, I can get you money within 8 business days. Contact me at R as in Russell, J as in James, P as in Peter, T as in Peter again, A as in Arthur, T as in Peter again, A as in Arthur, at yahoo.com. That's R-J-T-P-A-T-E-R yahoo.com. And if you're not in business and you need to earn extra cash and you don't want to go out and work for someone who's going to take advantage of you, or you don't want to spend the money to gas and get paid minimum wage, you can work with me, not for me, and earn big commissions. And all you need to do is place ads on the computer, on the internet, on Craigslist, on Backpage, on other sites, in the financial section. Only 15 minutes a day. Again, contact me at rjppapa@yahoo.com. Leave your cell phone number. I'll get back to you within 24 hours. And we'll discuss the issue. I can help you. Again, rjppapa@yahoo.com. Have a great day, folks.
All right. That was my friend, my Friday guest, Russell Papalardo. And let's see what we got here. All right. All right. That's my Russell Papalardo. RJ is my Friday guest. He does have a site up on Facebook, and I'm just getting ready to go there. There's some things I think we need to look at or listen to here. Okay, hold on a minute. All right, looking for it. Steve Austin had this to say: "We are on the edge of a cliff in this country. For decades, we've been lied to by those in power. We've been dumbed down in our schools, our communities have been dismantled, and our religious foundation has been under continual attack. Worse yet, our abilities to think independently and our sense of community has been ruthlessly discouraged and crushed for, at a minimum, 2 generations. We're being led down a path of destruction by elected officials that have systematically diluted and subverted the Constitution of the United States for personal and corporate interest at the expense of the people of this nation, in direct conflict with their oaths and responsibilities of the people that are charged to represent. It makes no difference whether it is the letter or the spirit of the law, however subtle. This is treason. It cannot be more clear that the checks and balances of government have been subverted and are no longer able to function as the Founding Fathers intended. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. We are very near this point, so my question to my fellow Americans and patriots is simply this: when will enough be enough? When will we put our differences aside and throw off our common shackles? Good question. Thank you, Steve Austin, for that. We've got news that the North Carolina governor signed a militia law. Will other states follow? Now, folks, I told you I started the selling peace symbols back in the 60s to protest to stop the war in Vietnam. We were able to do that. Now, I'm telling you, I started the militias after watching the federal government murder the children, 17 little children, at Waco. States across America are coming around to the realization that a strong state militia will be necessary going forward. My hats off to the North Carolina governor for signing this legislation, and to Governor Abbott in Texas for standing up and appointing the the state guard to keep an eye on Jade Helm. And I got demonized for doing the militias, and I started it in the governor's office also, Governor Gary Johnson. When I got demonized, my response was, what part of the Second Amendment do you not understand? A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. The founders understood what a militia is, so too does North Carolina. Now they made it official. Now, remember, the militia officially is every able-bodied man between the ages of 18 and 45. Do you live in North Carolina? Did you know you're a member of the militia? The governor of North Carolina recently signed House Bill 250, which updated the laws that govern the militia of North Carolina. In North Carolina, the militia is composed of several bodies. First, the North Carolina National Guard. The North Carolina National Guard, both Army and Air, shall consist of regularly commissioned, warrant, and enlisted personnel within the age limits established by regulations promulgated by the Secretary of the appropriate service, and shall be organized, governed, armed, equipped, and have such the duties and responsibilities as provided in this chapter. And there's a Navy militia. The naval militia shall consist of regularly commissioned, warrant, and established personnel between such ages as may be within the age limits. And third, the state defense militia, which is an organized militia not subject to federal call-up. The state defense militia shall consist of commissioned, warrant, and enlisted personnel called, ordered, appointed, or enlisted therein by the governor under the provisions of Article 5 of this chapter, shall be organized, governed, armed, and equipped, and have the duties and responsibility. And fourth, there's a historic military commands for sound interest, but I don't know anything about it. And finally, the unorganized militia. The unorganized militia shall consist of all other able-bodied citizens of the state and of the United States, and such all other able-bodied persons who have or shall declare their intentions to become citizens of the United States, who shall be at least 17 years of age, except those who have been convicted of a felony or discharged from any component of the military under other than honorable conditions. So you can see from the quoted paragraph that some changes were made to the law governing the unorganized militia. This should tell you that if something else was intended, they could have easily changed it. Unfortunately, for those anti-gun types who dispute the militia exists, and that it includes much more than the National Guard, this law confirms that each and every able-bodied adult citizen of North Carolina, minus a few exceptions, are members of the militia. Note carefully, it does not restrict militia membership to men. That means that women are also members of the North Carolina militia yea, equality. The governor shall, when ordering out the unorganized militia, designate the number. The governor may order them out either by calling for volunteers or by draft. The government may attach to them to several organizations of the North Carolina National Guard, the State Defense Militia, or Naval Militia, as may be best for the service. If the unorganized militia is ordered out by draft, the governor shall designate the person in each county to make the draft and prescribe rules and regulations for conducting it. Every member of the militia ordered out for duty who shall volunteer or to be drafted, who does not appear at the time and place ordered, shall be liable to punishment. As so, if the word goes out and you don't show up as ordered, you get a court-martial. The governor doesn't need to worry about me. If the state's in such a bad bind, I would be considered more of a help than a hindrance. I'll show up. All right, somewhere else. Going to now, I'm not a big fan of Alex Jones. He wants to talk about the militias, or he wants to talk about the Nazis, and etc., etc. But again, he does do some good, and you need to be aware of that. Let me see if I can find the link to this. Stay with me here. All right. Try to find this.
It has since became the largest anti-NDAA organization in America, introducing or pushing over 18 pieces of state and numerous pieces of local anti-NDAA legislation. A grassroots, nonpartisan, nonviolent organization, PANDA assists groups across the political spectrum united to prevent the laws of war from being used here in the United States and on American citizens anywhere in the world. Dan has written for several publications, including the Huffington Post, Policy Mike, Occupy.com, and Western Journalism. He has spoken at Paul Fest, Northwest Ohio Conservative Conference, the California Republican Women's Federated Northern Division Convention, Libertopia, and the Richard Mack Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officers Convention. Dozens of tea parties, peace gatherings, and more. And he has been interviewed on numerous radio shows, including Coast to Coast, Liberty Roundtable, Red Ice Radio, and Our Own Georgia. So at this time, I'd like to present to you Dan Johnson.
Washington. How you guys all doing tonight? Man, this is a crowd. Wow. Okay. I am super excited. You can't tell. As you mentioned, my name is Dan Johnson. I'm the founder and national director of Panda. And I'd like to recognize a few people today and really thank them for setting this up. First of all, give a big round of applause to Mike and Freedom Forum for bringing me here. And then I want to give a big round of applause to Abby and Keith for having me stay at their home so I could be here. And then last but certainly not least, Rico and Claire for organized constitutional...
All right, I'm not happy with that one. Hold on a minute. And this clip talks about Texas under siege. Military trains to overthrow state government. Let's see what that sounds like.
Our insider sources said, hey, this is an open source document, but they've got it hidden on one of their servers.
This is the Alex
It's
Jones.
public, but not listed.
Now, remember, I'll tell you, he'll point the finger at the Nazis. He ought to be pointing them at the Jews, but he can't do that because he's Jewish. But still, the information in this clip with a soldier with one of his staff here, with one of his reporters, I think is worth hearing. Let's hear that.
But by law, they're supposed to put this out. U.S. Army Special Operations Command requests to conduct realistic military training, RMT Jade Helm 15. It's a joint forces under NORTHCOM and out of Colorado Springs and out of the U.S. Army Special Operations Command out of Florida. And it is a unified program for 2 command bases to basically take over the entire state of Texas. And they list in the official document 2 states in 1 zone they believe during a takedown of the constitutional republic that they will, and this is all in here, that they will get resistance in, and that's because they have NSA data, they have future predicting systems. They also know, if I know this stuff, they know this. They know that Utah, led by the Mormons, say what you want about them, the Mormons have been playing along with the government, but the globalists have them all wiretapped and spied on. They know the Mormons actually have plans not go along. Very rebellious to the globalists, and they've also been smart enough to put their people throughout the government. They've got a takedown plan of Utah. They got a takedown plan of Texas. We're listed as hostile. That's because that's basically all there is left in the country at a governmental level of anybody they think will resist. They've got the demographics. They've got the people in government either on the payroll or spied on everywhere else. When Governor Abbott got elected, who we know is the real deal, and I know this from private sources, I've known him for years. It's a very good Christian man, you know, the governor in the wheelchair. He knows what's going on and has been having private meetings. I'm just going to leave it at that with people because these are not traitors. I mean, they understand America's dying right now, okay, folks? The country's gone. The borders are gone. They're bankrupting us. We're going into slavery. This is like France got taken down from within by the Vichy. Hitler didn't take over France. The generals stood down. Then he just chased the British Expeditionary Force out to Dunkirk. And then the French, I mean, Hitler, a week after the invasion, was already in Paris with the police directing traffic for him. And that's the type of takeover we see happening. And Texas and Utah are aware of this. They also have an area about 40 miles into California that's controlled by Mexican drug cartels that the U.S. Army expects to receive resistance when they try to occupy. 3 areas in the United States in this jurisdiction. They don't list on the map the Midwest, but I'll guarantee you Indiana's on it, and I'll guarantee you New Hampshire's somewhat on it. And I'll guarantee you to a certain extent Tennessee's on it when we get the full map. The rest of this is classified. But this is because they're now putting this out in the public as a psyop to hide it in plain view. That, yes, we're preparing for national stabilization, and that we're preparing to win the hearts and minds locally. It says that in the document. It's in our article as well. Then they add, oh, and also this is good training for overseas. Now, it's interesting. This was the biggest, or you could argue second largest prisoner of war camp in World War II was Camp Swift out between Bastrop and Smithville. This is where they're going to be running the operation with the entire combined forces of the U.S. military, but that is groups from all of them. Air Force Special Operations, Army Special Operations, Delta Force, Navy SEALs, all of them to run civilian operations. And this is also to assess which police departments are going to go along with it. And they basically admit all that in the document. So you want to see treason, folks? We've known about this for a long time, but this is it. And they're training to take over basically government buildings, to go into hardened courthouses, the Capitol, and basically take the governor and other people out.
Now, what you're listening to here for Crusade and Truth Radio is a clip from Alex Jones entitled Texas Under Siege, Military Trains to Overthrow State Government. Again, Alex wants you to be afraid. I don't want you to be afraid. I want you to walk right up to the soldiers taking place in Jade Helm and say, "Hi, what are you boys doing here? What do you think about what's going on?" Ask them what they're doing. Here we go.
And that's in the John Warner Defense Authorization Act. Bush was involved, 2007. The John Warner Defense Authorization Act says for insurrection in the states, including by the state legislatures or governors. It's not insurrection. It's duty. The government's been seized at the federal level. We're wide open. And now they're going to deploy massive amounts of military to practice basically taking over Austin. They're going to have helicopters flying around downtown, explosions, all of it. And they even talk about running into opposition when they do it. And they're talking about me. I'm the famous guy for chasing the black helicopters. Only because the San Antonio police chief, Houston police, Kingsville emergency manager, Thomas Sanchez was Army intelligence. And they came to him and said, it's martial law training for gun confiscation. Clinton wants to test the states and see who's going to be in opposition. Well, they know from the demographics. The reason they're worried about Texas and Utah, and I'm not saying these governments are perfect. In fact, we're probably going to get Joel Skousen on immediately. In fact, even today, I know we've got Dr. Paul Craig Roberts, and I know we've got John McAfee coming on, but maybe at 1, we got 30 minutes there, 1 to 1:30. Get him on because I know he has high-level sources in the Utah government, in the Salt Lake government, and he's been talking about believing Texas and Utah would be the main opposition points. Texas has been so overrun by third world populations, though, that the entire east and south will fall pretty much immediately to the feds. And they think the big war, the top analyst, is going to be fought in the Hill Country and into West Texas and the Panhandle. This is what the Pentagon's training for, folks. I mean, this is high treason. This is over the top. And I cannot believe we've fallen this far that they would. I already knew about all this in these maps. I already knew they were training at Fort Hood to take out the government. And why do you think the military is so awake? They are going, what? Training to take over government buildings in Texas? Are you joking? And that's why they fired hundreds of generals, thousands of officers under them. I mean, they are just, because they are finding out who will go along. They've got to train for this to identify their enemies in the military, because they're going to purge that. And let me tell the military something. If you kind of halfway go along with this and they carry out this purge, read about Night of the Long Knives. The first thing the globalists will do, they've done this in every country they control and so have other similar systems. They always follow the same narrative. It's criminology, but it also works. You think they hate veterans now in police? You help carry out the slitting of the throat of this country and the heart of this country? You are deader than a hammer, and it's not going to be Alex Jones coming after you. The globalists are going to come after you, and they are going to kill hundreds of thousands of you fools that go along with this.
What have I told you, folks? They'll go after the farmers first, the intelligentsia next, and the veterans and police officers that are still loyal to the old regime. So I'm backing Alex on this one.
It's a guarantee. The Soviets did it, the Nazis did it, Mao did it, Castro did it, Hugo Chavez did it. I just can't. And I'm going to tell everybody something either. Either you triple down getting the word out and exposing this, or you need to evacuate now. Now is the time to evacuate the United States. I can tell you unequivocally, you'll run for a while. You won't be safe in the end. But the fact that they're bringing this stuff out with the constellation of other news I'm going to cover when we come back, Hillary has come out on TV and called for adults to be made to go to re-education camps for racism, that all adults, this is what national service is going to be. It's not going to be military. It's going to be into these new homeland tattletale brigades. You're like, are you joking? No, I'm not joking. I mean, I told you. After they carry out terrorism, they're going to blame it on the Tea Party. They're going to make everybody go to re-education camps. I'm not joking. Joe Biggs just basically got, not threatened, but Southcom just got in his face. U.S. Army Special Operations Command, one of his good friends from the military, sent him a text saying we need to shut up about this. I mean, we're looking at Texas listed in Utah as hostile. They say they're here to condition us and prepare us. I have a stack of mainstream news articles documenting that they're preparing to, quote, use the military against gun owners and the Tea Party. They ordered the National Guard to confiscate guns during Katrina. I've got Hillary calling for re-education camps. You cannot make this up. Videos on Infowars.com. Hillary, we need fun camps for adults. They're preparing. The border's wide open. And we know about the civilian inmate labor camp program. We know about their plan. And we're not saying the military's bad, just like the German military wasn't bad at first. Hitler was bad. You have bad people running it. And we know most of the military's awake. But, Joe, unprecedented. What did your friend say to you?
So, yeah, this is a guy that I served with in Iraq a long time ago, and he now works with Special Operations Command, SOCOM, out of Tampa in Florida. And he's like, hey, man, I saw what you guys were talking about yesterday. That's a bunch of BS, man. He's like, you know what, it's just psychological operations. Don't worry about it. Stop pushing your propaganda against our operation. You know, we're clearly over the target. When they come and reach out to me like that, and I can tell that we've struck a nerve, you know you're over the target and you're really on to what's going on. I mean, these guys, I expect more of this coming from SOCOM over the next few days.
Well, I mean, it's like we're bad because we didn't want al-Qaeda to be backed against Assad. 2 years later, we're right and everybody agrees with us, including the Secretary of State. The military has reached out to us. They're in the news saying we don't want to be trained to take guns. They say in all the public documents they're training, this is in Forbes magazine, for war with the Tea Party with Northcom. It's treason. The Tea Party is the most law-abiding group out there, and that's what Texas is listed as an enemy by Southern Command.
And they know we can break away.
We have our own resources. We have everything.
And then you have the 1033 program as well, where they're giving all that military equipment to the police forces. And now this training is going to integrate that with police forces. They want to work with local law enforcement. They want to move outside of government-owned facilities, and they want to move into the public.
We're not supposed to, quote, counter their PSYOP with, hey, we don't want our military that's absolutely strapped and all over the world and troops having their funding cut and their benefits cut and put on secret death list. I love how their operative came out and attacked us when you put out an article and linked to the Indianapolis Star saying, you know, they shouldn't make fun of dead veterans, there shouldn't be death list, and we get called kooks by their, quote, veteran corps.
Yeah.
That's the group there to make sure the vets aren't taken care of. I mean, this is sick. This is sick. Well, what do you want to say to your so-called buddy?
That I understand that the PSYOP that you're running is not going to work, especially here in Texas. We're awake. We know what's going on, and we are going to do everything we can to expose what's going on, without a shadow of a doubt.
It's like the Twilight Zone. They've got Texas listed as hostile. They admit they're training for a takeover. We've got all the documents. They admit it's a PSYOP in the document. It's like saying we're bad because we get a kid out of a burning house or something. I just don't understand the mindset.
I mean, well, it's funny, though, because he's going, well, stop exposing the PSYOP. It's just a PSYOP. Like, that's the whole point. That's what we're supposed to do, guy. We don't want you to condition these people to think it's okay to see military running up and down the streets.
They legalized PSYOPs last year domestically. Well, that's unconstitutional. They could legalize taking the guns or legalize having slavery again. You understand, there's going to be pushback when you try to occupy the U.S. We're doing the military a favor. They want to start a damn civil war. Well, get your mind out of the PSYOP. You're the one under the PSYOP. What's his first name?
Dusty.
Hey, Dusty, you're the one under a PSYOP, buddy. You don't want to be an old man 30 years from now wishing you've been on the right side. I mean, how much more obvious? Texas isn't the enemy of America. The globalists are the enemy. Get it through your head. You want to tell you what the PSYOP's going to be, Dusty? It's when the globalists set off a nuke in a major city and blame it on the patriots, and you're forced into a civil war with us. You think fighting the Iraqis was fun? Imagine fighting the American people and 10 million vets. Do you have any idea? That's about 1,000 times worse than the Iraqis. Does this person have any idea? Are you an idiot? Want to say anything else to him, Joe?
I don't want to give him the time of day anymore, to be quite honestly. I already know what we got to do, and we're going to continue to run our operation. We're going to continue to expose this crap that's going on. I'm not going to sit by. I mean, yeah, I used to be in the military, but I'm still fighting for America, and I'm fighting on a more just cause, a better side now.
Hello, this is Hank Hill, and I'm telling you what, you need to listen to Alex Jones.
Infowars.com.
Judge, what is the secret of the universe?
Infowars.com. This is coup. This is what it looks like, and they've got to get the military in there and start putting Texas up as the enemy on the board. And then they got to put out public documents saying we're running a PSYOP to win the hearts and minds of the people locally, to condition us so that nobody fights back when they actually hit the state. And if you study it, that was done in Panama for about 6 months before they actually hit them. They did constant touch-and-go drills and declassified. That was the plan. There was a TV show on History Channel about it and narrated by Chuck Heston. And I've talked to the military. Now, listen, it doesn't mean this is imminent. They've been pushing this for a long time, but it's, on a scale of 1 to 10, it was about a 1 under Ronald Reagan, about a 2 under George Herbert Walker Bush, about a 7 under Clinton, dialed back to about a 5 under George W., and then now it's about a 9 under Obama. I mean, they are lined up like the Nazis lined up on the Polish border in 1940. I mean, it's not good. And again, I'm not comparing our military to the Nazis. I'm comparing militarily the lining up to what happened in World War II. And they are trying to get the PSYOP going, testing. Now, it's blown up in Starbucks' face. And Joe Jennings, we're going to talk to us in a minute. He lives in North Austin. He went into one this morning, and they pushed this Race Together sticker on him and gave him the lecture and told him to go to the website to be re-educated. And you say, well, that's a small thing. That's the start. Hillary has come out, because all this goes together like a horse and carriage. Hillary has come out and said we need fun camps for adults at which people will be forced to talk to each other about politics, race, the budget, you name it. That's on NBC News. See, Americans haven't ever really lived under true totalitarianism, so we're ignorant. We're like Native Americans who've never been around smallpox, so, you know, it killed 90+% of them. A European maybe killed 2%. Because everybody was going to get killed by them already had generations before. It's kind of like a dodo bird when they get off on, you know, Easter Island or whatever they were at, and the dodo birds are stupid and fat and juicy and don't run away. Well, they were all dead in a couple weeks because the sailors ate them. No more dodo birds. So we're kind of like dodo birds. We were born fighting tyranny 230-something years ago, but we forgot about it. And compared to other countries, we had a lot of liberty and became the apple of the world's eye. But we're not ready to deal with it now. We basically are like domesticated deer that just walk around in front of, you know, the hunters. And I'm here telling you, from the Texas experience, that's why Texas has this culture. Utah has a culture of being born out of rebellion more recently, like Texas, and being paranoid of the feds, and being paranoid of being invaded and taken over, because we were always getting invaded by Mexico or invaded by you know, other countries, or invaded by the feds who wanted it. I mean, just on. And Texas has that memory. And Texas is self-sufficient. So is a state like Utah. And there's talk in those governments that if the whole country falls into a North American Union, they're going to try to lead a coalition of other states to re-up the Constitution and Republic. My plan, that we've had constitutional lawyers on, is basically their plan. Doesn't mean they adopted my plan. It's a common sense plan that we have a right under the Declaration of Independence to abolish or reform the government. Well, we don't have a government. It's been hijacked. So we kick the hijackers out, re-upload the Republic. That's my idea for revolution, is restoration. And I happen to know Drudge Report leaked to it for like 5 days a few years ago. It got picked up in a lot of journals. A bunch of constitutional lawyers wrote articles about it and said, Mr. Jones's plan comes from the Constitution, Bill of Rights, and it's the plan we should follow. I came up with a plan to have the cities and counties and states pull out of the Patriot Act, at least at a moral level. Doesn't mean I'm a great guy. That plan got put out. I won the Project Censored Award for the plan and the analysis of the Patriot Act, and it got put on national television in 800-plus cities, and 7 or 8 states adopted it. That's because ideas are bulletproof, folks. I'm nobody special. I'm just here repeating, getting past the baton, what people said 240 years ago, what people said in 1836 in Texas, when David Ayers and William Ayers and my ancestors were here starting the revolution at Washington on the Brazos in East Texas, detonating it against the corrupt Santa Anna. Starting it. Well, now we're not starting it because I am just basically those people continued on. We're here trying to restore the Republic, and we could use Texas and other states as the political fulcrum or the political center of the wheel to reconstitute the states and just say to the feds, we know you're not feds, we know you're globalist, it's out of control, we've been maneuvered into bankruptcy, and it just so happens that they've had major confabs at the state level. They're fully aware of the plan to collapse the country. Texas doesn't want to collapse. Texas has developed its own plans to opt out of federal programs. They've been saying no to all the carbon taxes and open borders. Texas has been quietly securing the border partially. Texas is not going along with total federalization. The feds are pouring massive amounts of money into Texas, more than California, that they already captured, to federalize every little city they can. But they're not getting the counties and the state police. I mean, folks, this is a all-out war. You're living in the middle of a 21st century takeover by the corporate board. And if you just tuned in, feds preparing to invade Texas, list state as hostile. Some participants will be wearing civilian attire and driving civilian vehicles. And we have the video. Jade Helm is a challenging 8-week joint military and interagency IA unconventional warfare exercise conducted throughout Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, California, Nevada, Utah, Colorado. According to an unclassified military document announcing the training drill, which runs from July 15th through September 15th. So for several months, July, August, September, 2.5 months. Multiple branches of the U.S. military, including Green Beret, Navy SEALs, 82nd Airborne Division, this is an invasion training, will participate in the 8-week-long exercise, which may result in increased aircraft in the area at night. Troops will be tasked with honing advanced skills in large areas, undeveloped land with low population densities, and will work alongside civilians to gain their trust and understanding of the issues. You hear that? PSYOP. For cleaning out the countryside, folks. Get ready. The exercise in which some participants will be wearing civilian clothes and driving civilian vehicles lists Texas and Utah as hostile territory. And they've had cases outside Fort Bragg many times where they are playing the part of hostiles. They try to take over a police car and the cop kills them because it was the wrong police car and weren't taking part. I mean, this could really get bad. And, of course, they're arguing, oh, we just picked these as the red-blue force or the hostile, friendly force. No, because if you study deeper into this, this is all part of NORTHCOM. It's all part of the civilian inmate labor camp program. It's all part of the Brigade Homeland. It's all part of the National Police Stabilization Force, Federal Police Stabilization Force, the RAND Corporation. It's all part of this larger program. And I wanted to show you some of those articles here. Here's our article from 2011 by Alex Jones and Kurt Nimmo. Exclusive, government activating FEMA camps across the U.S. We show the federal purchase orders, the announcements, the hiring of internment specialists. I mean, firing up camps for at least 5 million people. It's all in there, linked to FedBizOps website. It's all federal government. Okay. Here's Congress.gov, H.R. 390, National Emergency Centers Establishment Act. And these are giant 6 facilities that can hold millions and where you will be re-educated, you name it, and for economic collapse. Now, these are already built. They just wanted to get it statutorily as a new, basically, cabinet branch, like Homeland Security, under it. Now, here's another just dovetail, the latest propaganda. HBO documentary hypes militia threat. Constitutionalists highlighted the full military regalia as the new enemy. Pull up Forbes for TV viewers. Pentagon trains to take on Tea Party. Pentagon trains to fight Tea Party rebellion. AP, you name it. This is what's going on. But first off, let's talk about the real threat. CNS News, ICE admits 167,527 criminal aliens loose in the U.S. aggravated felons. They release thousands every couple days. That's okay. The border's wide open. The Border Patrol's ordered to give vouchers to the illegals and bust them into the country, but they're training, and it's in the John Warner Defense Authorization Act, to take out, quote, insurrection in the states and by legislatures and governors. There it is, Forbes. Let's put it on screen. How the U.S. military would crush a Tea Party rebellion. And they've got Army War College stuff, even, talking about me. And, people, people like Jones think they're going to hurt our military. They're going to, give me a break. I have seen this threat coming because I was told by military and by police chiefs who came on the show. I was 24 years old when I had the Houston police connections and the San Antonio police chief on, and Thomas Sanchez, the head of emergency management in Kingsville and the entire county, and I had former Delta Force people on. I had famous Navy SEALs on. They were all retiring then, and they were all being called in and told about the plan by Clinton's people. And we held that off. And then people are like, where's the takeover? When we held it back. I didn't do anything. I was 24 when all this kicked off. I was 22 on here, 21, but 24 when I was a syndicated show on a few stations, a bunch in Texas, comparatively, and these people knew I knew what I was talking about, so I'd get sent more info, more info, more info, more info. That's the only reason I'm an expert, because I was told all this by FBI agents, police chiefs, federal marshals, local police, you name it. That's why I'm an expert, because I was told everything by the experts. And now they say, oh, Homeland Security's not for Al-Qaeda, they're for the Tea Party. I told you they were going to flip it.
All right. What do we do here? See what else we got here for the next 15 minutes. Go to freeamerican.com. Share these shows.
According to a newly released military document, it looks like the feds are getting ready to invade Texas. This is according to the Jade Helm 1-5, the Joint Military Training Exercise document. It's going to take place across 7 states for 8 weeks. And according to this document, it says residents may see an increase in aircraft in the area overnight. There might be an increase in suspicious activities, calls, and noise disturbances. And joining me in the studio is Joe Biggs. Now, Joe, you actually brought this to the attention of Alex Jones during the radio show today. It made it to the Drudge Report within about, yes, I mean, within the hour. Now, obviously, a training exercise like this can be really beneficial for our soldiers. So why is this one of such a concern?
Well, the thing is we keep seeing these small urban warfare training centers, these asymmetric warfare training centers popping up all across the country. Fort A.P. Hill that David Knight and I went to for about a week or so. Then there's another one in North Carolina that the U.S. Marine Corps is using as well. These are towns that look like urban America, soccer fields, churches, mosques, subway systems, all this stuff. And in the military, we have a saying, you train how you fight. You train in an area that will be like the theater of operation that you're going to be conducting combat operations in. So that's what makes me scared. Based off of that type of logic, using the military, you train how you fight, you train in the atmosphere of an area you're going to be training in. Why is this theater of operation, this training, look like America? And now they're taking this training from these small, urban training areas, and now they're moving it in real time to an actual number of locations across the country. That's something that people need to think about. That's something that should worry American citizens.
Right, and they're taking it off of federal lands and onto privately owned lands where they're going to now be getting
It's going to be in your backyard.
Right, and they're saying, you know, working in conjunction now with local law enforcement agencies, obviously going against the Posse Comitatus Act right there with that, but just letting them know, hey, you know, you might have some more people calling in about some suspicious activities, which, what does that mean? Do I need to be concerned that there's going to be someone in fatigues with a sniper rifle outside my window just training for...
Well, one of the things that really caught my eye when I was looking over the document, it says, be aware of increased aircraft activity at night. And that's something I'm going to touch on more in depth later in a special report that's going to be coming up. But what you have to understand is me being a former vet myself, I've been in Iraq and Afghanistan. I've worked with Special Operations, Green Berets, you know, Rangers, all the different SOCOM people that they have. And at nighttime, they go out in helicopters and they do raids. That's why it's concerning for me, because this is a snatch and grab mentality. This is what I think is going to happen. These guys are going to be doing operations in these towns via helicopters at nighttime, rappelling down, going to people's homes. You know, you throw a bag over their head and you take them off. This is going to get the military prepared and trained and ready to start throwing citizens in FEMA camps. And this is something we have to be concerned about, and it's something that we're going to cover, we're going to look at very closely to make sure that it's not stepping out of the boundaries of what it should be, just innocent training. Because when I read this document, it gives me goosebumps. It pisses me off, quite frankly, as a vet.
Right. And you also point out how there's like 1,500 of these agents are going to be, I mean, it's like all of the special forces.
Yeah, it's the Navy SEALs, Army Green Berets, Delta Force, you've got Air Force Commandos, you've got the U.S. Marine Corps Special Operations Group, the U.S. Marine Expeditionary Fighting Forces, and also you have the 82nd Airborne, which is a unit that I used to be a part of as well, that's going to be conducting these exercises. And yeah, it's around 1,200 troops. But the main thing that we showed earlier was the map, how they have Texas labeled as red, how they have Utah labeled as red. Now, if you go look at the legend in that map, it shows you that these are hostile areas. Now, why would they label Texas and Utah hostile in this training exercise? I think one of the main reasons is there's a lot of military forces, or a lot of military troops, I should say, that come out of Utah and Texas and Ohio and all these other states. And we've heard time and time again that the government comes out and they say that returning vets are the #1 threat. And this is why I think this is very concerning that they have Texas labeled as that. We have a lot of pro-gun, a lot of pro-constitutionalists, a lot of patriots who live in these areas, and I think that's why they've chosen this, because they're afraid that Texas could break away in a civil war against the United States and there'd be an uprising. And what they're doing is they're calling this unconventional warfare training. Now, unconventional warfare training is, by definition right here, our warfare activities consist of activities conducted to go after a resistance movement or insurgency. But you have to focus on the resistance movement part, because the patriot movement that's been going on, this liberty movement, has kind of kicked into full gear lately. And I think the government sees that. They know a lot of people are waking up fast, and they're trying to do the training they can to get ready for an uprise if it does happen.
Absolutely, and that it falls in line with a lot of other training manuals that we've seen. We reported on the civil disturbance operations. That was a leaked military police training manual that came out in 2012. They were in that soldiers would be ordered to confiscate firearms, kill American dissidents. Prisoners would be detained in temporary internment camps and re-educated to gain a new appreciation of U.S. policies. Of course, the newly implemented U.S. policies after, you know, martial law is put in place and there's a whole new set of rules. And so tell us a little bit. I mean, obviously, we know this is what you're going to be doing, a really in-depth report coming up, but you've got even more coming up after the show as well.
Well, yeah. Well, one of the cool things at the end of this video, we're going to air never-before-seen footage of Obama Deception 2, talking about these, you know, government-run psyops in other countries that are now going to be operating domestically here in America. So this is something that is going to be very eye-opening for a lot of people. But this stuff's been happening in little sections throughout the past few years.
Right.
You know, we saw the uprising in Ferguson. We saw how they brought up that militarized police group and they controlled people. It was almost like a psychological operation on how that happened. And then we went out and exposed the Fort AP Hill. And then you have these tanks that are showing up at like Spokane, Washington, and the people's reaction to not liking that whatsoever. And then within the next year, California is supposed to be getting this large MRAP that I call the tankbulance. and they think just because it's going to have a Red Cross paint on the side that there's not going to be an uprising in the community.
Right.
So this stuff is happening piece by piece, but this right here, this operation, this Jade Helm 1-5, it gives me goosebumps, and it's something that I think people need to be very upset about. They need to research it themselves. Don't just listen to what we're saying. Go out here, go to the website. You can find it yourself, read about it, educate yourself, and stay tuned for more reports on this, because we're going to be covering this, because when the time comes, when this operation starts, I'm going to camp out there. I'm going to be out there in the woods every day, filming, recording, and finding out what is going on.
Right, and I just think it's insane that they would think that our patriots would turn against their own American people, and they're going to train them, and I mean, it might just be a huge psyop on the military. But
well, one of the funny, the things that they said in the document is that they said that this operation will be conducted in Texas because Texans support military operations. Yeah, we support military operations in a combat scenario against a bad guy.
Right.
Why is our military training to conduct operations against American citizens?
Right.
Because why else would they be training here? Texas does not look like Iraq or Afghanistan.
Right.
I've been there. I've seen that. So this area, this is complete and total psyop. This is training. They're trying to get the citizens in the area used to military operations being conducted in and around them, getting that one-on-one experience, seeing soldiers with an assault rifle around them, the helicopters flying overhead, the tanks coming in, the MRAPs, so they can desensitize people to that. So when it does happen, they think it'll make a smoother transition. But I guarantee you right now, people in Texas aren't going to stand for something like this.
Absolutely not. And I think we really are being geared up for some sort of civil unrest. And it's just like William Binney, NSA whistleblower William Binney said yesterday, you know, that we're now working with a government who has a country and not the other way around.
I mean, they're trying to force vaccinations on people. They're trying to take our guns. They're trying to ban the ammo. So essentially, if they can't ban the guns, if they ban the ammo, then your weapon is, you know, essentially not, you know, it's just a paperweight.
Right.
So they're trying everything they can on all fronts to attack us, to attack our rights, to take our liberties. And this is something that people got to be pissed off about, and we've got to do something.
Absolutely. Well, we're looking forward to.
All right. That was InfoWars, and again, they want you to be afraid. I want you to be a little pissed, personally. But I don't want you going out and overreacting. I don't want you taking it out on our soldiers. Those soldiers will soon be veterans, and we got enough veterans around that we can talk. We can talk. Kaminsky, I just had an article past my desk by John Kaminsky. This endless series of foreign invasion that leaves so many innocent people dead leaves most Americans in a state of amazed frustration at the lies our government tells us to justify the gratuitous carnage it insists is essential to our own national security. The world we knew of treating people honestly and being in a world where we can make our way in a satisfactory life seems dead and gone, destroyed by a force that to this very day we have never adequately identified. The white civilization that gave to the world its basic organizational structure and so many of the wonderful inventions everybody considers essential to life now seems to be melting away in a contrived confusion of malignant spirit and a frightful chaos of society that makes sense to no one except the manipulators who seek to envelop the entire world in its profit-making chains. We wonder today at how much money and how many lives can be thrown away on actions that seem of no benefit to the American people, yet it is the U.S. government that is doing both the spending and the killing while claiming its actions are heroic. It makes us wonder who our government is really working for and why we continue to allow it. Who benefits from this endless war-making besides the incomprehensibly rich oil companies, the greedy bankers, and the puffed-up politicians who sell weapons of war to anyone who can buy them, certainly not the majority of the American people, who today are sinking into poverty as we watch our country disintegrate. as a result of these suspicious and barbaric policies? Why are the millions being spent on exotic and expensive military weapons when our people are starving and unemployed? This is a question that all Americans at one time or another ask themselves. So it will come as a surprise to you that these very questions were answered in detail, in vivid and thoughtful detail, in a book written 67 years ago at the close of World War II. The religious call this force Satan, the more clear-eyed call it the Jews. Goodbye. Go to freeamerican.com, make a donation, support this work. Thank you.
Thank you.